My name is Marguerite Weiss, and I'm the co-chair of the Braddock District Democratic Committee. I'll be your moderator tonight. Thank you to the Fairfax County Democratic Committee and the Braddock District Democratic Committee for putting this event together. And thank you all for being here in person and via recording to hear from those aspiring to represent our community. We have 4 strong candidates here with us tonight. Ms. April Pavis-Schroeder, Braddock Small Business Commissioner Sabrina Matten, Braddock School District Board Member Rachna Sizemore-Heiser, and Fairfax County at-large School Board Member Il-Rong Moon. Each candidate brings their own experiences, perspectives, and passion for public service, and tonight you'll hear their visions for Braddock's future, from economic development to public safety, education, housing, and more. We have developed 5 questions based on input from the community. While not every topic can be addressed in an hour, the questions represent issues that are top of mind for Braddock's voters. Here's how the evening will work. I will call on each candidate to speak in randomized order. Each candidate will give a 2-minute opening statement, and then I will pose our 5 questions to the candidates. For each question, the candidates will have 2 minutes to respond. After all the questions, each candidate will be given a 2-minute closing statement, and I will wrap up the evening. Please keep your applause brief so we can maximize our time for substance. Our goal tonight is simple but important: to help Braddock voters understand where each candidate stands on the pressing issues facing our community. With that, let's begin. Our first opening statement will come from April.
Okay. Hi, my name is April Pavis-Schroeder. I moved here to the Ravensworth Farm community about 14 years ago. I've been raising my daughters there since the first one was born 9 years ago. I know what a good community looks like because I moved 8 times by the time I was 11 years old. I was a military brat and moved around numerous military bases. And if you know anything about a military base, you know that the community and sense of togetherness there is, you're not going to find it anywhere else that strong. When an active duty parent is away, the reliance on your neighbor is critical. And that is what I have felt these 14 years living here in the Braddock District. I volunteer in 2 county government programs, the Consolidated Community Funding Panel and the Parent Empowerment Program. And those have given me such a beautiful look into what our government employees are doing every day. And as a public librarian for 14 years, doing the work, I know what it takes to do the work of being a government employee. Here's what I believe as a candidate. We should all be able to afford to live here. That includes our young people who graduate from these incredible schools, and we have built them with these great resources and skills and education, and then we ship them away because they can't afford to live in the neighborhoods in which they were raised. The same goes for our seniors who built our senior adults. They built their entire lives here, or a large portion of their lives, and they can sell, but they can't buy anything else. And that's not how we should be treating the people who have really shaped our community. I believe fully in public transportation. We shouldn't be relying on larger roads, wider roads. We should be relying on public transportation that is effective, efficient, and capable of taking care of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll be hearing from Rachna.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Rachna Sizemore-Heiser, and I'm your proud Braddock District School Board member. I moved to this district 24 years ago to raise my family. I am the child of immigrants. My parents came here with nothing for a better life, my brother and I want to start by talking about them because they set the foundation for my service to the community. My mom was a refugee. She escaped for her life as a child with her family and went on to earn a STEM scholarship in India in the 1960s to get a PhD in computer science and mathematics when no women were doing this. She came here, couldn't get a job because of her accent and her gender, volunteered at a computer lab, to prove what she knew and end up being an early woman at Intel. She showed me that there's no barrier you can't overcome, and creative solutions will get you where you need to be. I went on to college at UC Berkeley. I stayed there for law school, and I started my career in top law firms doing mergers and acquisitions and employment law. I have the financial background and know how to solve complex problems, but that did not feed my soul. We moved here as a young family in 2001 to raise our family. I moved here to go into public service because I wanted to serve my community. When my son was diagnosed with autism at 2.5 and I was told to put him in an institution, I realized my fight was for him. It was for people like him. It was for people who are immigrants, all of those who don't have a voice and need someone to speak for them. That fight took me all the way to the school board, where I became chair, vice chair on my first term, and I'm currently serving as the budget chair. I'm here to fight for affordability, for a smart economy where we can grow our own local economy, and focus on workforce development to make sure we can have affordable housing, childcare, and maintain our quality of life, for safer pedestrian, bikes, transportation options, protect our higher ed and academic integrity, and have strong schools and public safety. I have a proven track record of getting things done, beating extremism, and serving my community, and that is what I want to do on the Board of Supervisors.
Next, Sabrina.
Good evening, and thank you to my fellow Braddock District Democrats for hosting this forum. My name is Sabrina Mateen, and I'm proud to be running for Braddock District Supervisor. I'm a proud product of Fairfax County. I was born here, raised here, and educated in our public schools. And after college, I came back to build my future here in Braddock. I built my small business here because this is the community that raised me. It's home. I fought for local entrepreneurs on our Fairfax County Small Business Commission and helped lead the Fairfax Young Democrats to ensure that the next generation has a seat at the table. My experience isn't from a government title, it's lived. It's the experience of starting a business from the ground up, navigating rising costs like so many families do, and giving back to the community that raised me. But I know that my story is becoming more rare. Fairfax once gave me and so many others the opportunity to thrive. But we're at a crossroads. Our seniors are struggling to stay in the community that they built. We're struggling to fund our priorities like education, and too many young people like me, are struggling to move back home. If we want this county to remain a place where every family can plant roots, succeed, and come back home, we need leaders ready to fight for the future. And that's why I'm running, to make sure Fairfax works for everyone, to keep Fairfax affordable, fix transportation, and build a future-ready economy. Fairfax gave me every chance to succeed, and I'm running to ensure that those same opportunities are here for our generation, the next generation, and every generation. Thank you.
And finally, for opening statements, we'll hear from Ilva.
Good evening. Thanks for being here. Thanks for including all of 4 of us here to have a conversation with you. My name is El Young-moon. I'm a school board member at large and running for Braddock District Supervisor. This is my 23rd year on the school board. And I also served as a planning commissioner for 4 years. Actually worked in this room for 4 years, where community members with a passion came out and told us how much they cared about community development and how much they cared about their property values. I came to the US as an immigrant at the age of 17 from Korea back in 1974. Back in 1970s and 60s when I was growing up in Korea, Korea was a poor country. And neither of my parents had much wealth and much education at all. My father didn't get to graduate from high school. My mom only had a second grade education, unfortunately. But they believe in the value of the education, wanting to have a better future, provide a better future for their 3 children. Father and mother made a decision, huge decision for the family to come to the US. Father first came in 73, and the rest of the family followed a year later. They had language barriers, but they worked hard. My father and mom worked long, long hours. My father is an electric technician in Washington, D.C. My mom is a housekeeper. And 3 decades ago, I wanted to return something back to the community because so much contribution so much benefit I received living here in the U.S. pursuing my American dream. I ran for school board and still serving on the school board in 23rd year. I have 3 things as my main issues: affordable housing, best schools, and keeping government operations efficient.
Thank you for your opening statements. So now we'll have our first question. Unemployment in the DC metro area is rising at 8 times the national rate, driven by instability in federal hiring and contracting. 2 days from now, thousands of federal employees in the deferred resignation program will stop receiving pay, and many will be ineligible for unemployment assistance. On top of that, a potential federal government shutdown could hit our region especially hard, directly impacting Fairfax families and county revenues. Our current governor and lieutenant governor have dismissed this as not a real issue, so we cannot expect any leadership or help from the state until Abigail Spanberger is sworn in as our next governor in January. Given this environment, what concrete steps can Fairfax County take to support federal workers and unemployed residents? Should the county set aside reserves, expand safety net programs, or develop partnerships to cushion the blow here in Braddock? So our first respondent will be Rachna.
Thank you for that very important and timely question. And as someone who has federal workers in my family, as federal contractors, this is a terrible thing for our economy. But what it shows us is that we need to make sure we diversify our economy. And I have a vision for a strong, smart economy that plays on Fairfax County's strengths. We can grow our own industry hubs here in areas that we already have from our federal workers and the skill sets they already have in cybersecurity, in clean tech, in AI. We can grow industries that fit who we are. I've seen other areas do it. I've studied other areas that do it, and we can do it here so the federal government becomes a plus and not the main. That is my long-term vision, and I have a track record of promising and delivering what I promise. In the short term, Fairfax County supervisors have created many programs such as Nova Next, Talent Up, Virginia Ready, workforce centers to help our federal workers retrain, reskill, and get new jobs. We need to expand upon those programs, provide mental health support, meals assistance, and job assistance in the meantime to support our federal workers. They are a highly skilled workforce. We have a high need for some of the skills that the federal government has abdicated on. That's a great partnership. I also want to start a one-stop hub for helping people start small businesses, because we know small businesses drive our economic growth. And a lot of our federal workers are pivoting into starting their own businesses. I want to help them streamline that, cut the red tape. I want to leverage their skills and the honed in the federal workforce. I also want to make sure that we offer practical guidance, entrepreneurship, and career exploration. In the meantime, to address our unemployment, we have to attract strong businesses that bring support for unions, for labor, so we have fair wages and can address the affordability. But by growing our own strong economy, which other places have done, then we can afford affordability, maintain our strong schools and our safety. We need people with a vision to get Fairfax County into the future. And we need people with a plan to support our federal workforce now while we get there. That's me.
Thank you. Ilham, you're next.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sizemore-Heiser has mentioned a lot of good points, and there's nothing that I disagree with the points raised by her. And in addition to that, I want to mention a few other things. As a school board member, I think Ms. Sizemore-Heiser also will agree with me on this one, that school system has been doing a pretty good job in helping career switchers, and also being able to help those career switchers be able to find the way to get teacher certification in an expedited manner. In a similar fashions, there are things that Fairfax County government can do for those laid off federal workers, and also it's not just the federal workers, by the way. For each federal government employee in Fairfax County, there's a 2.5 contractors working for all of us, federal government and all of us. They are also being impacted. And also, it's not just those federal government employees or contractors. There are a lot of small business owners because of less spending by these laid-off workers and contractors. Their businesses are also being impacted. As far as a one-stop shop is concerned, that was something that I had worked on as an attorney. I practiced small business law for 40 years, and I had retired at the end of November. My law practice is centered upon average people, a legal list, daily legal list of average people. So I know what people are going through these days. I know how we can make it much easier for small business owners and other business owners be able to operate their businesses here and be able to support their family.
Thank you, and April, let's hear from you.
Because of what's happened from the administration in Washington, D.C., there's been a 67% increase in home sales in the DMV, and we have the largest rate of unemployment right now in the country. We are seeing an exodus of really smart people who have been living here. They've been our neighbors. They've spent their money here. They've been raising their children here, and so we're losing friends as well. And let's keep in mind that this is not the last time this is going to happen. This is not the first time it's happened. So I'll talk in a moment about how we can prep for this in the future. But for the now, George Mason University has done some really great things with their online training hub. They also have a small business support and coaching programs, which I think is really great. Nova has also stepped up and invested over $1 million into their programs. So if we're helping people focus their attention on those resources, that's really helpful. How do we prepare ourselves against this in the future? We know that it's going to happen again. There needs to be some kind of emergency housing reserve. There needs to be some way that we are supporting our federal workers when crisis hits. I think the last government shutdown was just a few years ago, and we in our neighborhood we put together grocery shopping for our neighbors who were laid off, and they had no idea how long it would be. That's what you do. You feed your neighbors. Additionally, this isn't just something that affects the federal workers. Mr. Moon said about the contractors, but this is the kind of thing that also happens to union workers pretty regularly when their contracts get shut down and closed for no good reason and with no cause. So we see it coming from DC, and it's big in the news, and it really affects our region. But unnecessary firings happen pretty regularly, so we do need to be looking out for everyone in our community, not just our federal workers. There's a whole lot of us that we could be looking out for.
Thank you, and now we'll hear from Sabrina.
I really appreciate this question, Marguerite. As a former federal employee and contractor, it's been so sad to see what's coming out of the Trump administration. Fairfax is home to thousands of federal workers. They're the backbone of our community. But with layoffs and hiring freezes under the current administration, too many families are living in fear today. I've heard from our neighbors who are unsure if they're going to be able to make their mortgage. We've been very reliant on DC for funding and for jobs, and unfortunately the administration has shown that we cannot continue to do that. So as supervisor, I will continue on my work that I have already been doing through the Small Business Commission and other avenues to stand with our federal workforce while building for a resilient future. That means adding to what we're already doing with resume workshops and job search assistance. We've already been helping with that. Expanding job retraining, upskilling, job placement programs for displaced workers, because unfortunately a lot of these long-term employees were not considering ever re-entering the job market. They wanted to retire in those jobs. We're in a unique situation where we have a lot of vacant office spaces here. So I would like to partner with George Mason and VCs to repurpose these vacant office spaces and turn them into innovation hubs. Also, I would like to support our local small businesses with incubators and access to capital so entrepreneurs can create jobs here in Braddock. There's a lot of county resources as well, so we just need to do a better job of letting everybody know know what resources are available and to expand on those. We could be making a lot more strategic investments in retraining for high demand sectors like IT and cybersecurity and healthcare. So we need to build a robust local economy here. I will not leave our Braddock families behind. My promise is to be there for our federal workers today and to build an economy that ensures families will continue to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving to our second question. Fairfax County officials have faced pressure from Trump-aligned leaders to cooperate with ICE's brutal and often illegal tactics and to limit access to reproductive health and LGBTQ+ rights. Just last week, the Trump Department of Education cut $3.4 million in funding from Thomas Jefferson High School over so-called DEI issues, with additional millions at risk. Meanwhile, MAGA Republicans are pushing to privatize public schools through vouchers, threatening the stability of the Fairfax County public school system. Trump's FDA is preparing to roll back public health protections like vaccine mandates, while states like Florida have already removed vaccine requirements for school attendance and even threatened pediatric practices that enforce vaccines for their patients. As supervisor, what steps can you take to defend Fairfax's values against these pressures, whether by resisting federal and state mandates, protecting reproductive and LGBTQ+ rights, or opposing efforts to drain resources from our public schools and undercut public health? And April, you're the first to respond.
Thank you. Luckily for us in Fairfax, in 2021, we enacted the Public Trust and Confidentiality Policy. It's often just called the Trust Policy. What this does is it sets mandatory standards for county services and our immigrant residents. So our immigrant residents can get access to all county services, and there could still be fear because they might feel that, but the county is not sharing any information with ICE or any other organization that might want to take them out of this county or country. And so obviously upholding that and making sure that our law enforcement is on board with that is really important. When it comes to the fact of the matter is educating them that we do have their back. So how do we do that? We're not going to host a session here because that sounds like easy pickings, if you will, right? So what we do is we use who is already doing this work. We go to organizations like Tenants and Workers United. We go to the unions that already exist and say, here is a resource you can use, that you can hand out to your union members, to the families that you interact with. We can work with churches and other faith institutions to say, here's how you can combat the fear that some of your members and friends might be feeling. When it comes to our LGBTQ brothers and sisters and siblings, for example, FCPS Pride has been doing incredible work for a really long time, and we should be following their lead. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Fairfax County has already been doing really incredible things to push back against this administration. And so I also follow, we should also be following the Fairfax Health Department, because they got us, I believe they got us through COVID really well by keeping us informed and aware of everything that was happening.
Thank you, April. Sabrina?
The MAGA agenda is about fear and division. We've seen ICE raids rip families apart, reproductive rights stripped away, and neighbors targeted for who they love and how they identify. One of the saddest things happened this weekend when I was out canvassing. I knocked on a family's door and a mother answered, and she had her kids in the background, and they were running back and forth, and the mom was telling me that her children were afraid to go to school because of ICE. They were terrified, and it was a heartbreaking conversation, a conversation that nobody should have to have. I vow to keep ICE out of Fairfax neighborhoods, ensure that our trust policy is upheld, protect reproductive health care access, no exceptions. I've heard from folks at the Inova Pride Clinic that they're afraid to provide necessary services because they're going to lose federal funding, that there are doctors out there that are also afraid of losing federal funding to provide necessary care. These decisions should be made between doctors and patients, not politicians. Politicians have no right to be making healthcare decisions for anybody. Our residents should feel safe, respected, and celebrated. ICE should be fully out of Fairfax County because they're illegally targeting our immigrant communities, and I will not allow that. My family, they immigrated here from Afghanistan. They're Afghan refugees. When I worked in Afghanistan for USAID, there were folks that we brought over with the withdrawal who are afraid now to go to work. They're visa holders who don't want to go to work because ICE is illegally targeting people here who are on their pathway to citizenship. In closing, I will stand strong against MAGA extremism. Fairfax should remain a place that is safe, healthy, and welcoming for all who call it home.
Thank you. Next up is Ilron.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the questions. As a school board member, I've been fighting against the Trump administration. I've been fighting against MAGA extremism. We are currently, as you probably know, they're in litigation with the federal government threatening us to cut close to $170 million unless we change our policy related to how we fairly treat our transgender students. Back in 2014, I was the school board member who made a motion to include sexual orientation as a part of our non-discrimination policy because I strongly believe that we should not be discriminating against any student or employee based upon their sexual orientation. A year later, 2015, it was Mr. McGilvin's motion and I seconded. We worked together to expand the non-discrimination policy to include gender identity, not to discriminate against transgender students or employees. And we are still fighting. I remember school board meeting room fully packed with an angry mob, meeting after meeting after meeting. Some of them calling out my name, meeting after meeting. I stood firm. I fought hard. I'm still fighting hard against Trump administration. I will continue to do so. I'm an immigrant. There are a lot of immigrants out there who are truly fearful of being arrested by ICE for no reason whatsoever. For many of those people, in fact, school enrollment had dropped by about 4,000 from our regional expected enrollment. Large part of that, I suspect, might have to do with students not showing up. That cannot continue.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from Rachna.
Thank you very much. As a mother of a son with autism, as a child of immigrants, this is very personal to me. I think we all agree that what the MAGA agenda is doing to Fairfax County and our values is horrible. But I was the only one on the school board for the last 5 years. I was chair of the school board when we had the attacks coming at us. We had pressure from Youngkin to ban books. We had pressure from Youngkin to take away our policies to support our most vulnerable students, including our LGBTQ students. We have pressure to whitewash history. I was chair and stood up and said, no thank you. I have a history of beating extremism and getting things done. That same year when we were beating down Youngkin's extreme agenda, we also passed historic collective bargaining. We revamped literacy curriculum. I can do both, and that's the beauty of having the experienced, proven leader that we're here. What can we do? I have some great ideas. First of all, on vaccines, we can follow the lead and create our own regional public health guidance based on real science and the former CDC guidance. Other jurisdictions, California, Washington, Oregon, are creating their own public health guidance. We can do the same thing here. Once Spanberger is in office, we can ask for the state to create that public health guidance, again, based on science, and follow that here. I can continue, and I will continue Supervisor Walkinshaw's great work on protecting reproductive rights that he started, including making sure health clinics have accurate information and women are protected in accessing the reproductive rights in our local health clinics. We can partner with our health clinics, and we can also make sure that we continue to stand up and protect our most vulnerable people, immigrants, people with disabilities, LGBTQ students, because everybody has the right to belong, and everybody has the right to be their authentic self. It is right, it is legal, and that is who we are in Fairfax County. There's ways we can do it. We can leverage our expertise, our healthcare, our public health system to create our own guidance. That is what we're going to have to do now. We can protect reproductive rights. We can protect immigrants. I'm proud that I voted for the trust policy in 2021. I supported it. I'm proud that we insisted that it's displayed prominently in the 8 most common languages in every single school, so our families, when they come in, see this trust policy. And I will proudly uphold similar policies, the trust policy on the county side as well, to make sure that we don't just walk the walk, but talk the talk, we walk the walk. That is what I have done. That is why I'm endorsed by the Alliance for American Leadership, because they are a nonprofit to support global aid and federal workers, and they've endorsed my campaign because they know I do what I say I'm going to do. I've done it for 4 years. I've stood up to the extremism, and we've gotten things done. I'll do it again. Thank you.
Thank you all for those really personal answers that you gave. I appreciate that very much. So our third question. More than half of Fairfax County's budget supports our schools, serving nearly 180,000 students, while residents also depend on parks, libraries, first responders, and human services. With costs rising and revenues limited, the Board of Supervisors is directly responsible for balancing these competing priorities. What specific choices would you make to keep schools well-funded while also protecting county services like fire, police, transportation infrastructure, libraries, and parks? If more funding is needed beyond raising property taxes, do you see other strategies to meet these needs? And we will hear from Rachna again first.
Thank you so much. This is a great question, and this is a tough question. We are at a difficult place in Fairfax County with the downturn in the commercial real estate market and what's going on with the federal government. We are in a tough spot. I have ideas to take us in the future. I have short-term and long-term ideas. In the short term, the Board of Supervisors has already created a rainy day fund. We cannot pit essential services against each other. We must fund our essential services. We must have safe communities. We must have strong schools. We must have our quality of life. That is what attracts families and businesses here. In the short term as well, we can look at our surplus funding to see if we can use that to further economic development. In the medium and longer term, we have to grow our own smart economy. We can create innovation hubs. In the short term, we can partner with George Mason, we can partner with Nova to support our federal workforce and bring them back into our economy. We can repurpose our empty commercial spaces, bringing in small businesses, giving them space in the commercial spaces and affordable housing. But we do that by bringing in future-ready industries like cybersecurity. We already have a strong cybersecurity base. George Mason has a strong cybersecurity training program. Fairfax County has certification programs. These are jobs for college and non-college degrees that is going to be needed as identity protection gets stronger and our federal government abdicates its space. We can grow that industry. We can grow AI and AI-adjacent industries. We can grow an industry in clean tech and healthcare. There's a desperate shortage of healthcare workers, and we can train them here, and that brings money into our coffers. We can also ask the state for more opportunities to diversify our tax base and our taxing authorities so we take pressure off homeowners while making sure we have money in our coffers. But until then, we need to protect our essential services because that's what makes Fairfax County great.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from April.
We can't raise taxes anymore. We can't ask our working families, those who are facing government shutdown every other year, our adult seniors, senior adults, we can't continue to raise taxes. We must ensure that our essential services are fully funded and the employees are cared for, and that their departments are not a piggy bank for another department. When someone moves to Fairfax County, there's an expectation of a few things. Great education system, world-class services, fantastic libraries, and beautiful parks are just a few of them. And if we are going to call something an essential service, then we have to fully fund it and keep that money there. And then when the union workers come to us and say, no, but we need this, then we have to give them that. We have to give them the equipment that is life-saving for them and for them to do their jobs. And we can't take that money from something else because we want it. Not everything gets to be a priority, and that's really hard to swallow. We generally get what we want, especially in an affluent community like ours. But hard decisions do have to be made, and our essential services must absolutely be fully funded.
Thank you. Yoram?
Once again, two candidates have shared a lot of good points, and I'm not going to repeat those. With that said, I'm a senior citizen, retired, relying on fixed income, and I see how ever-rising property taxes can affect their life. We cannot continue to expect more taxes from our residents. So I'm not going to be in favor of raising taxes, but at the same time, I am going to be supporting basic services, basic essential services. Schools are essential, public safety are essential. But at the same time, also, two governing bodies, school board and board of supervisors, need to task their chief executive officers, county executive and superintendent, look at every program in the school system and in the county government using the concept of principle of zero-based budgeting to see whether there's any efficiency we can generate, any savings we can generate, and also look at whether there is any services being provided by two governing systems to be consolidated, to work together so that we can use our taxpayers' money much more efficiently. Thank you.
Thanks, and now we'll hear from Sabrina.
I'm the candidate with a robust budget experience and economic development plan to fully fund our priorities. Fairfax families want a government that manages our tax dollars responsibly while still investing in our schools, services, and infrastructure. Rising property taxes hit homeowners and renters alike, yet too often residents feel like they're paying more and getting less. We cannot continue to put the burden to fund our priorities on our working families. Enough is enough. People are struggling to afford to live as is. As supervisor, I'll work to diversify Fairfax's revenue base, so we're not leaning heavily on property taxes alone. That means attracting new businesses, promoting smart redevelopment that grows our commercial tax base, and making sure economic development translates into relief for our families. At the same time, I'll ensure that county spending reflects our real priorities: strong schools, safe communities, affordable housing, and environmental stewardship. I'll push for performance-based budgeting, greater transparency, and regular public reporting so residents know exactly how their money is being spent. My pledge is simple: every dollar collected will be invested with fairness, efficiency, and accountability, because government works best when it works for the people who fund it. And my pledge is fair, efficient, and accountable use of every taxpayer dollar. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Tens of thousands of Fairfax households spend more than half their income on rent, putting them at risk of eviction. At the same time, food pantries are reporting record demand. These challenges are particularly visible in Braddock, where both seniors and young families are struggling. What policies should Fairfax pursue to expand affordable housing and reduce food insecurity? What is required to encourage developers to include more affordable units in new projects? Should tax relief programs for vulnerable seniors and the disabled be expanded? And should the county play a bigger role in sustaining food banks and local nonprofits? So we're going to turn first to Ilro.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. For my campaign in providing affordable housing, if I am fortunate enough to get elected to become a supervisor representing Braddock District, that is my top priority, and that's my top issue. If we cannot provide affordable housing to the people living, who wants to live and work in Fairfax County, we're not going to be able to attract people to here. I will see it over and over again as a school board member, how we bring in young teachers to teach in Fairfax County. But since they cannot afford to stay here, they travel, they come in from far away, and then after a few years, when they get a certain number of experience and training from us, they go to schools very close to where they live, Prince William or London. We cannot let that happen. This affordable housing issue is not just for young people either. As April stated earlier, affects the senior citizens too, who might want to downsize, but still want to stay in Fairfax County. It's hard to find affordable housing for the senior citizens. And also, one additional group that we need to pay a special attention is people with disabilities. They have certain physical challenges, intellectual challenges, and accessibility. And there is such a huge shortage of affordable housing for this group of people too. What should we do? I know the county just set a certain goal to reach 10,000 affordable housing units by 2034. And we only have gotten very little to that, little more than 20,000. That's my memory. And we got a long way to go. In order for us to be able to achieve that goal, we need to raise that amount of tax revenue set aside for this to 2 pennies, and that has to happen by next year. I think that's where we should focus on. We should focus our main attention to it.
Thank you. Sabrina?
So we all know that Fairfax County is one of America's wealthiest counties. Families should not be forced to leave because of rising costs, or forced to be or have to choose between rent and groceries. Yet I've watched seniors on fixed incomes and young people who grew up here struggle to stay in Fairfax. The facts are that the median price for a home in Fairfax County today is over $700,000. Over 40% of our renters spend more than 30% of their income on housing, classifying them as cost burdened. And housing growth has not kept up with population growth, and this is contributing to affordability challenges for young people, for seniors, for families. As supervisor, I'll expand down payment assistance for first-time buyers, strengthen rent stabilization and tenant protections to prevent sudden rent spikes that push people out, and a really big one is fair assessment in taxes. I was speaking to a family the other day. They said, we bought our home for $400,000, but all of our neighbors are developing at a rapid pace. They're building mansions on their property, and now my tax rates have gone out the roof. I paid for a $400,000 mortgage, and that's all I can afford. I can't afford to stay here. And it's unacceptable that there are folks that face food insecurity. I will expand access to healthy school meals, ensure that our county programs are accessible and adequately funded, even with our upcoming shortfalls from the government, the federal government. Food security also means attacking it at its root. That is underemployment, low wages, and higher living costs, so families have both dignity and stability when it comes to financial security.
Thank you. April?
Zoning has to change. Nearly 50% of Fairfax County is zoned for single-family homes, and we need to rezone and approve multiplexes such as a duplex or a triplex. And you can't tell me there's not room for it because a 6,000 square foot home just went up next to mine and it sold for just about $1.3 million. That could have been a triplex. That could have housed 3 families for about 1,500 square feet. I live in 1,400. I think 1,500 is just fine. And they could have been, let's say, $400,000 each. That is much more manageable than, as Sabrina mentioned, these huge mansions going up, pricing us out of our own neighborhoods. When we talk about housing, we also need to talk about, as Mr. Moon said, our workforce deserves to live here. Where I grew up for kind of the largest portion of my childhood was in Southern Maryland and Calvert County. And they had the same problem where they couldn't keep their staff living in their county because they couldn't afford it. They built workforce housing in the center of the county. And that is where specifically firefighters, law enforcement, I believe county health department and teachers, only they could apply for the mortgages and for the rents there. That was an incredible thing that they did to keep good teachers in a good school system. When it comes to food, I grew up on military bases, right? The commissary. If you have been to a commissary, you know how much money you have saved on everything you get. How do we implement that here? I don't know. However, it's possible. When my mom ran a food pantry for about 12 years, I was one of her best volunteers, if I do say so myself. We would borrow trucks from people at our church and we would drive them to the commodity pickup days, meaning the government issued canned food pickup days. And we are there with our trucks loading this stuff. It's just like the stuff we get at our own stores, it's just labeled differently. We can provide that to places like ACA and Cornerstone, who are incredible here in our own community.
Thank you. Rachna?
Thank you. And affordability is the cornerstone of my platform. Affordability, smart economy, and maintaining our quality of life. But we cannot have our seniors age in place. We cannot attract young families that are the lifeblood of the future of the county if we can't address affordability in housing, in childcare, and support services. So in terms of housing, there's a lot of ideas that I have. I appreciate the Board of Supervisors' goal for 10,000 affordable housing units by 2034. I appreciate Supervisor Walkinshaw's creative solution to using part of the parking lot here at the Government Center for affordable housing units. I believe we need creative solutions like that. We can look at spaces where we have empty parking lots or expanded parking lots for affordable housing solutions. We can partner with places of worship to see if we can add affordable housing units upon some of the big parking lots that they may or may not be using. There's creative ways to find space because at the end of the day, we have to increase the housing stock. We don't have enough housing for the people who need it. So you've got to find a way to increase the housing stock. You can use empty commercial spaces and create mixed-use spaces because what people and young families want is to be able to live, play, and work in the same space. People want walkability. They want less reliance on transportation. And we can do that by repurposing commercial spaces, by creatively using empty parking lots and other spaces for affordable housing. As far as food, I was very proud on the school board that during COVID, we provided meals for every student who needed it because and even when students were virtual, we had buses taking meals to other places so students could eat because we recognize the importance of eating for academic success. I think we need to use our surplus and our rainy day fund to also support our food banks to help make sure they have food. We also need to partner. We have a lot of companies here who want to help. A lot of them reach out to me as a school board member saying, what can I do to support a school? What can I do? I'm partnering with a couple right now to bring some programming. We can partner with them to provide funding for our food banks. So there's creative ways that we can tap into resources here without having to burden our taxpayers more. We just have to be willing to find and do those solutions, and I have a history of making that happen.
Thank you. So now for our last question. Fairfax County has long relied on federal contracting, but leaders agree we need a more diverse and resilient economic base, as I think we've already heard tonight. A bill to categorize Fairfax as eligible to host a casino failed in the state legislature this year, but will be reintroduced in 2026. If it passes, the Board of Supervisors would decide whether to authorize a referendum on a Tyson's casino. Unions, which have traditionally received strong Democratic support, back the project for the jobs it would create. But the majority of the public seems to oppose it over concerns about traffic, crime, and social costs. At the same time, Fairfax is facing an accelerating loss of population, raising questions about how attractive and sustainable the county remains for families and businesses. Given this context, how would you, as Braddock Supervisor, approach any Tyson's Casino initiative, balancing union support, public opposition, and broader economic needs? And beyond the casino, how should Fairfax respond to population loss and ensure the county remains competitive in attracting new residents and new industries? So first, we'll hear from April.
I'm not going to take this idea as my own. I have to give it credit. I was at a working families discussion last night, also hosted by the Fairfax Dems, and Supervisor Jimenez from the Mason District said that he has an idea that we could be a real international sports location. And that got me thinking about all that we really could be doing around here. I know there was a really good sports complex put out in Loudoun County in the past few years, and there is a lot to be said for that. And if you have been near any indoor pool on a Saturday morning, you know exactly how big that is for our kids in this community. So we could really be pulling in a lot more tourism in that area. When it comes to the entertainment center, and I call it that because I know we all think of it as a casino, but I recently learned that it also includes a hotel, conference center, restaurants, performing arts center. And I learned that it was going to be 100% union run from construction to day-to-day operations, including maintenance, front desk workers, general managers. I think for those two reasons, it's really worth looking into this a lot more fully. And with the caveat that we do a full environmental markup study on what would be the impact of that size of a building, structure, really it's like a campus, where that is. Anybody that's driven along Route 7 in a light sprinkle of a rain knows that it immediately gets flooded. We can't just add a 34-acre structure and think that the problem isn't gonna get worse. So what do we do with that? And if you've driven that stretch, you know that it takes about 15 minutes to go half a mile, and that's not an exaggeration. So how are we implementing better public transportation in that area? The city of Alexandria has the free dash bus that goes up and down King Street and Duke Street. Why aren't we copying that in especially those really dense areas?
Thanks, Sabrina.
Fairfax must be future ready. We've seen that we cannot rely on DC for funding or jobs. Our long-term prosperity depends on broadening our economic base. That's why I'll focus on expanded job training, supporting our small businesses and entrepreneurs, repurposing vacant spaces into innovation hubs to create good paying jobs and a stronger, more resilient economy. There's a lot we could be doing with private-public partnerships, building collaborations between the county, our chambers of commerce, universities, to create innovation and workforce training. As for the proposal to bring a casino to Tyson's, I believe that this issue demands a careful, community-first approach. Any decision should be based on facts, data, and a broad community input. I am here to serve you. I'm here to serve my constituents, to listen to what you want me to do. And our economic future should not hinge on a single project. It should rest on a foundation of diverse, sustainable growth. And as for attracting new residents, this is honestly one of my favorite topics. We have a youth task force that was created a few years ago, and this is something that's near and dear to me as a young person. We're losing our identity here in Fairfax County. We're losing out to Arlington, to Loudoun. We need more mixed-use spaces. We need to fight for affordability, amenities that people want, like coffee shops, third spaces. It's all about placemaking, building this a place where people can afford to move to and want to live in, right? It's where you want to live, work, play, and thrive, and I am committed to doing that.
Thank you, Rachna.
Thank you. I'll start by saying, as a union member myself, as a school board chair who got a stalled collective bargaining resolution passed unanimously, I'm a strong believer in union jobs. Fair wages, strong wages lift up the entire economy and lift up everybody. That is why I'm working with my colleagues on a forum topic on public labor agreements, PLAs, which the county also has a pilot on. These are sustainable union jobs by requiring procurement contracts for infrastructure development to require to use union labor. It is not a one-done project, it is a sustainable long-term plan for increasing union jobs. That is what I'm working on the school board, and that is what I'll work on as a supervisor. I talked a little bit about my ideas for growing a strong and smart economy. When I ran for the school board, I said we have to have a strengths-focused education. We need strengths-focused economic development. We have a federal workforce and retired military that have strengths in intelligence, in cyber. We have a healthcare need with Inova here and Nova and George Mason for healthcare education training. These are jobs of the future that are high demand jobs. We have the largest use of AI, Fairfax County, one of the largest uses of AI. We need not just Gen AI jobs, but AI adjacent jobs in prompt engineering and business processes, because people who know how to utilize this will be able to survive and thrive. We need jobs in clean tech, where the federal government is abdicating its duty in identity protection and cyber. We can pick it up and grow that industry. That is what I want to do here. I also want to make sure that we cut red tape and streamline permitting, both in housing and in business development, especially for small businesses. I talked about my one-stop shop. I think that'll help grow our economy as well. So that there are ideas. As far as the casino, the entertainment district, I have knocked, me and my team, over 6,000 doors. I take my job of representing my constituents seriously. I'm not just here for what I believe, I'm here for what they believe. I have not seen community support for this. And until I see community support, I'm looking at other ways to diversify our economy and take pressure off taxpayers and increase our revenue streams and our tax revenue.
Thank you. Ilram?
As far as issue of casino is concerned, I am aware one of my competitors, Sizemore Heiser, has just stated, I am willing to learn, sit down with any and all stakeholders, because I'm a learner, but until there is sufficient level of a public and community support to put this on the referendum, even after we have legislation, I'm not going to be able to support to put this on the referendum. But I need to do my due diligence first, because there are a lot of things that I'm actually hearing different things from different parties. That's where I need to spend more time with them and conducting my research, and also obviously the community is going to be the most important. With that said, as far as I didn't get a chance to address, because I was so excited about point that I wanted to make affordable housing. I didn't talk about food insecurity. One thing that I want to add to what had been already said by the other three candidates is federal government is again threatening to cut close to $170 million, and 1/3 of that goes to help poor students. 36% of our students, more than 96,000 county residents, are poor people. And they need to eat, God forbid this happens, even if we lose federal funding, we need to take care of these young and hungry people. I grew up poor, I grew up hungry. My family struggled to have 3 meals a day. I know what hunger means.
So thank you all for answering my questions so well, and we're ready for closing statements. First up, we have Rachna.
Thank you. Thank you for taking your time to come out to listen to us. Local government is where the action happens, where a lot of your day-to-day lives are impacted by what we do here, so this is important that you are here. I am a proven leader. I'm the only candidate here who's beaten back MAGA extremism and moved things forward, from collective bargaining to closing achievement gaps to promoting inclusive education to standing strong for our students and making sure everyone feels welcome. I have been chair, budget chair, and vice chair. I have been endorsed by the chair of the Board of Supervisors, Jeff McKay, because he knows that my work on the school board will translate well to my work here and my work in the community. I have deep ties in Braddock. I have lived here for 24 years. I raised my children here. I have been around the pools. I've run around it. I've been a coach. I love this community of communities where we take care of each other and we look for each other. We have a lot of issues here: affordability, need to diversify our economy, protecting our federal workers, and I have solutions to those. I know how to work collaboratively to get things done. That has been my history for 15 years. But I want to end by telling you my why. My why is when I had lived here for 6 years, my husband died. He was 35. I had 2 young children, one with autism. My family in California said, come home. Come home. You've only been there a few years. But it was my Braddock community, my neighbors, my friends who wrapped their arms around me, who drove me to the hospital every day, who learned about autism so they could babysit my son. They helped me survive and thrive. And I'm doing this because I want my community, my county, our schools, our workforce, our people to be ready for a future where Fairfax County is the place to be, where families come because they're welcome, where we protect our values, protect our immigrants, and have an economy that works for every single person. I have ideas, I have a track record, and I have local leaders who endorse me because they believe in me. I hope you do too.
Thank you. Ilham?
So we have this important primary coming up on October 4th. For the online voting, you can register for online ballot, and then you can start voting from October 2nd online. I am hoping for your vote, whether online or in-person voting at the 3 locations on October 4th. With that said, when my parents made a decision to come to U.S., move the whole family to the U.S., they made a right decision. They had just lost 2 of their children. I lost 2 younger brothers when they were small because my family was too poor to provide proper medical care. We couldn't take them to doctors. My parents' American dream was to send 3 children to college. 3 children's American dream was to go to college. By 3 children all working hard, studying hard, going to college, everyone in the family achieved the American dream. I was so benefited by free public education here, good teachers, and scholarships. That is why 3 decades ago, I wanted to return all the benefits I received back to the community by providing public service. And I've been doing that for 30 years. 23 years in the school board, making sometimes very tough budget policy decisions, and 4 years making important land use decisions. 40 years practicing law, helping average people, small business owners. I know, as an immigrant, I also understand what many of our immigrants go through on a daily basis. I'm hoping for your votes on October 4th.
Thank you. April?
I'm a renter, a mom of 2 elementary-age daughters, a volunteer, and an activist since about 14 years old. I've spent my career as a librarian and now as a nonprofit administrator to improve every community I've ever lived in. Here's a few points that I haven't made yet that I'd like you all to know. Utility companies should not be raising rates because of the wear and tear, raising our rates because of the wear and tear that data centers are putting on our grid. Data centers should be held to strict environmental rules and create their own energy as much as possible, like with solar. So some regulation has to be created, and since we are the data center of the world here in Northern Virginia, we have the opportunity to really write that template, and we should be doing it. Affordable housing timelines have to be cut. Every single week that a project is held back, it is costing more and more money, which then costs more at the end for the person who might be buying or renting that space. Mental health is a is a problem, and we should be caring for each of us. The county has a co-responder program where social workers and people from like the Community Services Board, for example, will go out on calls for behavioral calls or mental health crises. That program needs to be expanded tremendously because they are not around the clock. And that mental health doesn't just work from 9 to 5. Mental health crises can kick in at any time, and we need to be available and ready to take that on. We need to educate all residents about all the things that local government can do. When I go to my friends and say, I'm running for Braddock Supervisor, they're like, oh my gosh, that's great, what is that? And that's not good. First of all, that's not good for my vote. That's also not good for the fact that we need to be engaged in what we're doing. Lastly, 1 in 5 Virginia residents has a disability, whether that is seen or unseen, and we need to care for all of those who require that and rely on that, and the health center and health department are people to look towards for that. Thank you.
Thank you, and last but certainly not least, Sabrina.
Fairfax County is a place full of promise, but promise alone won't keep us moving forward. Families are counting on us to deliver stronger schools, affordable housing, reliable transportation, and a healthier environment. I'm offering something different: new energy, fresh leadership, and a stronger Braddock. I've already delivered as a commissioner growing our local economy, as a court-appointed special advocate protecting children, as the co-president of the Fairfax County Young Democrats, bringing the next generation of leaders forward, and I want to follow in Supervisor Walkinshaw's footsteps of delivering innovation. He appointed me to a task force that dealt with land use and thinking innovatively of what we should do with our underutilized parking spots. And building up instead of out. And when you leave tonight, I want you to look at the affordable housing that's going up in the government center parking lot right now, because that is an example of innovation that we worked on together. What sets me apart is my full commitment and my experience in business management, which is crucial for our success in Braddock. This will be my highest priority. No competing priorities, no divided focus. My constituents are my top priority. I will be the supervisor that comes to your HOA meetings in the evenings, checks on road work at midnight, and defends your schools and services at dawn, because Braddock deserves a leader who is all in. On October 4th, I humbly ask for your support so we together can build a Fairfax where every family has a chance to not just live, but to thrive. Thank you all so much.
So let me just say, wow, I think this was amazing, and I want to thank our candidates, Rachna Sizemore-Heiser, Sabrina Matin, and April Pavis Schroeder, for taking the time to answer challenging questions with care and conviction, and honestly, such personal honesty that we saw. I think it was fantastic, and actually, let's applaud them again, because I think they did a great job. So we've discussed some of the most critical issues before Fairfax County: supporting our federal workforce, protecting our values against outside pressures, funding schools and essential services, addressing housing and food insecurity, and planning for a sustainable economy and a prosperous future. So I want to encourage you all to continue this conversation, read more about the candidates, ask your own questions, but most importantly, you need to vote in this special election. The direction of Braddock depends on your participation. And finally, as the co-chair of the Braddock District Democratic Committee, I want to emphasize that our commitment doesn't end tonight. Whoever wins will face real challenges, and our job as engaged citizens is to hold them accountable, to push for fairness and integrity, and to hold them up so that they can be the leaders that we need to ensure that Braddock remains a place where families can thrive. So I want to thank you again for your attention. If you would like to take photos with anyone in front of our beautiful backdrop, please come down and take photos. And good night, and I will see you at the polls. So thank you all very much.